He has been convicted by a U.S. military court.
Omar Khadr stands convicted of being a murderer and also being an Al-Qaeda terrorist.
But his defenders say he is innocent.
It was a hellish decision that had to be made, and he had to make it on his own, and now to get out of Guantanamo Bay.
On News in Review today, the trial of Omar Khadr. Hello, I'm Michael Serapio. In early August, a young Canadian went on trial at the U.S. military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Omar Khadr was charged with killing an American soldier in Afghanistan in 2002, as well as a number of terrorist offenses. The trial was controversial. Many people believed Khadr should never have been charged because he was only 15 when those offenses allegedly occurred. But who is Omar Khadr, and how did a kid from Toronto end up in such a situation? 2 years ago, the CBC's Susan Ormiston prepared this report.
He's an accused murderer and Al-Qaeda fighter.
You know, I think he's a criminal, and I think he's a terrorist.
But that's not everyone's view.
He's personable, he's decent, he's kind, he's good-hearted.
Omar Khadr is a Canadian, the only Westerner left at the U.S. detention center at Guantanamo.
He's been in solitary confinement for years. I mean, there are enormous psychological impacts.
Only 15 when he arrived, Khadr is now 21, stuck in a legal limbo as he awaits trial for the death of an American soldier. How did a young boy become a so-called enemy combatant caught up in the U.S.'s war on terror?
This bottom chunk right here, that's where Omar was.
You have to go back to July 2002 in Khost, Afghanistan. U.S. Special Forces were on patrol for Al-Qaeda.
So that's the spot in there where Omar was hiding.
Sergeant Lane Morris's team circled a compound with armed fighters holed up inside. Afghan translators went in first. They were shot dead.
You can see all the bullet holes through the door.
The U.S. soldiers returned fire, killing 3 Al-Qaeda fighters.
Well, then we're shooting at them. They're shooting us, and they're throwing grenades at us. They're throwing grenades over the wall at us. So we got to kind of back up and get out of the way of the hand grenades.
But not far enough. Morris went down when shrapnel blinded him in one eye. Air support was called in. 2 500-pound bombs dropped on the compound. Everything went quiet. The Americans moved in, confident everyone was dead. Then suddenly, a grenade whizzed over a wall. Sergeant Christopher Spear was hit by shrapnel, mortally wounded. But who threw that grenade is a matter of intense dispute. Lane Morris's version.
Omar pops up, throws the grenade, shoots the pistol. The grenade goes off, somebody returns fire, hitting Omar a couple of times. He goes down. There's no one else in the compound.
That story's not true.
What part?
None of it.
Lieutenant Commander William Keebler was appointed by the U.S. military to defend Khadr at Guantanamo.
There was at least one other adult combatant alive in the compound when U.S. forces stormed it. That individual was actually fighting U.S. forces, unlike Omar, who was, according to one key government witness, sort of sitting down, facing away from the fight, slumped over against a bush, suffering from what we know to be fairly serious wounds to his eyes at that point when he was shot in the back at least twice.
No one actually saw Omar Khadr throw a grenade. And last February, a document leaked from Guantanamo seemed to confirm Khadr was not the sole survivor. The eyewitness account by a soldier, identified only as OC-1, said there was another man firing on U.S. soldiers when they entered. As for Khadr, he was shot twice in the back, the bullets exiting out his chest. An American medic patched him up enough to save him. He was transported to Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, a U.S. captive. Within months, he was shackled and hooded like this in a plane en route to Guantanamo. The American case against Khadr stands on some highly controversial evidence. First, Khadr's role in Al-Qaeda. That is what he confessed to under intense interrogation at Bagram and later at Guantanamo. There are videos, which we can't see, and interrogators were told to tear up their notes. But his defense team is convinced Khadr's treatment bordered on torture. Munir Ahmed was Khadr's U.S. lawyer for a time. He visited him over a dozen times in 2005 and 2006. Khadr told him about the interrogations.
Sometimes they had him essentially hogtied so that he was on his stomach and his wrists and were pulled behind his back and his ankles were pulled up and the forelimbs were shackled together.
Also key to the prosecution's case is a video. It shows Khadr as a teenager with other men apparently wiring up explosives. It's a powerful bit of evidence, allegedly found in the compound after the battle, tying Khadr directly to Al-Qaeda. But Lieutenant Commander Keebler has a different interpretation of the video.
And I think it shows a 15-year-old boy under the control of a bunch of much older people. He's a victim of others, you know, and it's not just my perception. I think that's the law's perception. That's why we have a child soldier protocol. That's why we have special laws for juveniles that hold them less accountable than adults are held, because the law generally views children as less culpable and less responsible for their decisions.
Omar Khadr was just 9 when his family first attracted attention. He was born in Canada, but his family had moved to Pakistan. He and his siblings were indoctrinated by their father into the world of jihad. For a time, the family lived in a compound set up by Osama bin Laden. His brothers were sent to training camps in Afghanistan. The U.S. says Omar was too. In a CBC interview in 2004, his mother Maha and sister Zainab said they were proud of Omar's bravery.
Wouldn't you like your Canadian son to be so brave to stand up and fight for his right? Wouldn't you like that?
I mean, he'd been bombarded for 4 hours. I mean, it's a war. You're shooting at him. Why can't he shoot at you? If you killed 3, why can't he kill 1? I mean, why does nobody say you killed 3 of his friends? Why does everybody say he killed an American soldier? Big deal.
They have said some things that are deplorable and offensive, and there has been a general, I think, unwillingness or reluctance on the part of Canadians to sort of view Omar as a separate individual, apart from his family and some of their comments.
In 6 years, Omar has talked to his mother only a few times. He says he now believes he's in Guantanamo because of his family and seems to be distancing himself from their radical views. Officials from Foreign Affairs describe Khadr at 21 as likable, funny, and intelligent. A top U.S. guard there says he's salvageable, non-radicalized, a good kid. In Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, compared to other detainees, Omar Khadr is a bit player. Still 6 years in detention, he waits without a trial date, as 2 countries wrestle with his fate. Susan Ormiston, CBC News.
The U.S. military has never allowed reporters to interview Omar Khadr, but his lawyers did release video of Khadr being questioned by Canadian intelligence officials when he was 16.
He said, I can't move my arms. I requested medical for a long time. They don't do anything about it.
No, I mean, they look like they're healing well to me. You know, I'm not a doctor, but I think you're getting good medical care.
No, I'm not. You're not here.
Later, when he realizes the Canadians won't help him, he is devastated. In 2009, a Canadian court ruled that our government had violated Khadr's charter rights by refusing to help him. Judge James O'Reilly wrote, Canada had a duty to take all appropriate measures to promote Mr. Khadr's physical, psychological, and social recovery. The judge ordered the government to repatriate Khadr, but the Conservative government refused to budge.
The facts in our judgment have not changed. We will be looking at the decision very carefully and obviously considering an appeal.
The government did appeal, and in January of 2010, the Supreme Court issued a mixed decision. It agreed Khadr's rights had been violated, but it said the government did not have to ask the U.S. to send Khadr back to Canada. And in August, the trial of Omar Khadr finally began. And it did not begin well for him. The military judge ruled the most damning evidence against Khadr was admissible, despite concerns it was obtained by torture. The decision allowed both a video showing Khadr making and planting IEDs in Afghanistan and a confession made when Khadr was 15, even though the defense argued he'd been threatened with rape before making it.
So many of the statements that Omar Khadr made when interrogated almost certainly were either a result of torture and ill treatment or bear the taint of torture and ill treatment, and that is of no concern here.
It's our intention and our hope throughout this trial to shame this judge, which may be impossible, but hopefully to shame the jury so they can really get a true picture of what Omar stands for.
But the trial never really happened. It was delayed when one of Khadr's attorneys collapsed in court, and when it resumed in late October, a deal had been worked out, and Khadr had agreed to plead guilty. The CBC's Laurie Graham reports.
Omar Khadr came to court in a dark suit, ready to face the judge, but his lawyers say he was conflicted. Khadr had always said he wouldn't admit to something he didn't do, specifically that when he was 15 years old on a battlefield in Afghanistan, he threw the grenade that killed American soldier Sergeant Christopher Speer. But after 8 years in Guantanamo Bay prison camp, and now 24, Khadr decided to plead guilty.
Omar Khadr stands convicted of being a murderer and also being an Al-Qaeda terrorist.
Lane Morris was blinded in one eye during the same firefight that killed Speer.
It was very satisfying to hear Omar Khadr stand up and admit to the things that I've known for 8 years.
But Khadr's Canadian lawyers maintain he's innocent.
It was a hellish decision that had to be made, and he had to make it on his own. And now to get out of Guantanamo Bay.
Khadr pleaded guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence and a promise that after serving 1 more year in Guantanamo Bay, he can apply for a transfer back to Canada to serve out the rest of his sentence. There are diplomatic notes within the plea deal, which lawyers say indicate that both governments have consented to the details of the agreement.
Canada's language is sufficiently satisfactory to uphold Canada to its position that it will take Omar Khadr back after 1 year. And the American language is even stronger.
Omar Khadr doesn't go back to Canada as a free man. He goes back to serve whatever remains of his sentence within the Canadian penal system and under Canadian law.
The military jury was not told about the plea deal, so the trial continued with a sentencing hearing. Prosecutors described Khadr as a terrorist who is still highly dangerous. But when the young Canadian took the stand, he denied that. Here again is Laurie Graham.
Omar Khadr took the stand, but because this is a sentencing hearing, was not forced to take an oath, which means his testimony can't be challenged by the prosecution. He spoke softly as he told the court he's had a lot of time to think in prison and now realizes love and forgiveness are more constructive and will bring people together. He said he dreams of getting out of Guantanamo Bay prison camp and going to school to become a doctor. I've experienced physical pain and I've experienced emotional pain, he said, and I would really love to relieve the person who experiences such pain. Khadr spoke in response to Tabitha Speer. She's the widow of Chris Speer, the U.S. soldier Khadr says he killed. She told the court she's experienced unthinkable pain. She described the day she had to tell her daughter Taryn her father wasn't coming home. As I told her, she let out a scream. That moment, a part of my daughter died with my husband, she said. She was 3.5 years old. Today, her daughter is 11, and she wrote a letter to Omar Khadr that her mother read out loud in court. Because of you, my dad never got to see me play soccer or see me go to kindergarten. Khadr kept his head down through her testimony, only glancing up occasionally when Speer spoke to him directly. You will forever be a murderer in my eyes. But when Khadr was given the chance to speak, he addressed Tabitha Speer directly and apologized. I'm really, really sorry for the pain I've caused you and your family, he said. I wish I could do something that would take this pain away.
The prosecution had asked for a 25-year sentence, but The 7-member military jury handed down a sentence almost double that. As Omar Khadr stood staring straight ahead, they told him they wanted him to spend an additional 40 years in prison. The lead prosecutor said he hoped that would send a message to Khadr and anyone else who kills an American soldier.
I hope as his future is planned, that number 40 will stand out as a strong signal that he needs the strongest and most effective intervention.
But since Khadr pleaded guilty in exchange for an 8-year sentence, he will only serve 1 more year at Guantanamo. The rest of his sentence will be served in Canada, where soon after he arrives, he is expected to apply for early release. And that is News in Review. Now don't forget to check out our website at newsinreview.cbclearning.ca. I'm Michael Serapio. Thanks for watching.
Up to 4 barrels of water are used to produce 1 barrel of tar sands oil.
As the debate over the oil sands continues, both sides appeal for public support.
You don't want to bring 1 drop more of water on site than you need to.
On News in Review today, the oil sands and the PR war. Hello, I'm Michael Serapio. Alberta's oil sands are already a massive energy project, a project so big it can be seen from space, and now it could get even bigger. Most of the oil produced in the oil sands is exported to the United